Hi everybody. So in our video series on application how-to for clean armor, we're going to talk about your gun setup and spraying. Okay. So now I realize that everybody's using different types of guns, but what we're going to talk about today is universal between all guns. Okay. So we are using an HLVP gun. You can use an airless. Really doesn't matter what you use. I don't think it's more about the tip, having the proper airflow. Well, we'll say that the HLVP that the Clean Armor recommends, this is the Devil Bliss GPG. We've had good results with. If you're trying something different, we've tried a few other ones. We've tried some I can't remember the name. It doesn't matter. They didn't really work that well. I've tried Harbor Freight ones. I've tried a number of different stuff, but right now the Devil Bliss gun has been the best one that I've found so far. With that being said, one thing is a must-have is you need a digital pressure gauge. They're about $24 on Amazon. They're not expensive. But you need that to dial in your gun properly. If you're trying to use an analog gauge, you're going to be very frustrated because a pound or two one way or the other can make the difference of whether you're getting orange peel or if you're getting splatter or nibs and those kind of things. So it's really, really important. These are precision instruments to have a precision gauge on here. Don't go cheap on that. Now, with that being said, we are running an air compressor with a refrigerated dryer, so our stuff's dry. If you don't have one, make sure you have a dryer in your line to keep moisture out of your spray. Okay. Now, when you're setting up your gun, you got a few different adjustments. You've got your airflow adjustment here. You've got your needle adjustment and then your fan adjustment. This is the same on all guns. This determines whether the fan's big or small. This is going to determine how much the needle goes in and out and how much fluid you're getting. This is going to determine the airflow in the gun. This is going to determine the air pressure and airflow in the gun. Now, when you're adjusting your gun, you want to have this all the way out, okay? As wide open as it'll go. All right, never adjust your gun with this closed. All right, this is for fine tuning, not restricting. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to turn your air gauge on. Now it's going to show how much pressure is in my system, which is 92 pounds. All right, now you have where it's just blowing air, and then a little bit more, it goes out finish. So you see right here, I'm at 14.5 pounds. Now I let off. See how it slowly comes up. It's going to take a second or two for that to equalize. So when you're spraying, you don't want to just start over the workpiece and go. You want to start off the workpiece, give it about a 2 count, and then go over the workpiece and give your gun time to equalize pressure. Because what's going to happen is you're going to have too much pressure when you start, and it's not going to show even on there. And you're going to have part of your piece that looks good, part of it's not. So wait for your gun to equalize pressure before you start moving all the workpieces. It's okay to get a little bit of spray out there. It's not going to hurt nothing. All right. Now, with that being said, so we're trying to get to 21. So now I adjust my nozzle to restrict. Oop, turn it back on. It's timer off. So I got it on. Wait till it equalizes. And now I'm going to start restricting my flow on the gun. So I want to get to 21. So now I'm adjusted right. But before I've done that, I've adjusted this to get as close to that number as I could with this wide open. Then I do my fine adjustment here. So that's where I want to be. So now if you look, I'm going to do a little fine adjustment. You want to check that every time you pick up this gun. And the reason being is this is right on the bottom. So guess what? Every time you set it down, it gets bumped. Okay. All right. So that's crucial. Oh, it's just like when you're using your woodworking tools. You always check your fences and make sure everything's aligned right before you start working. And your pressure is really, really important when spraying this stuff. Okay.
Everyone always asks, they call, they'll say, what's my pressure I need to be?
So with that being said,
and it can vary from gun to gun.
It's all about this tip. Mm-hmm. So every gun that you buy is going to have different air tips on it and different needles. And it's going to tell you in the documentation what your pressure is. Okay. Whatever that says, that's what you need to run. Okay, so if it says you need to run 16 psi or 21 psi or 30, whatever it is, go by what the max rating is on this nozzle. Because this is a more viscous product, it does need to be run at whatever the max is for the nozzle. Personally, I've found run whatever the max is on the nozzle. I get good atomization there. If I run too much, it lays out smooth, but I get little like spikes in it, like almost like nibs. If I run too low, I get orange peel and splatter. So it's really within a pound or two difference, makes a big difference. And what I recommend you do is just get a good workpiece to start on, get it sealed, get it ready for a top coat, and just do a few tests on it. Test it. Does it lay it out right? If you don't like it, wipe it off, do it again. It takes less time to wipe it off with a little bit of alcohol and a rag than it does to resand it. And you're not wasting your time sanding and having to wipe and clean and waste paper and your time. It takes me 30 seconds to wipe off a top. And you don't have to do a whole top. You can just do an area this big. Okay, that's good. Oh, it's got orange peel, or it's got this, or whatever the issue is, and then you make an adjustment. The other important thing when you're doing your spray work is how far you are above the workpiece. You should be about 6 inches to 8 inches up, no higher. Okay? And your fan, you want to have, if you look over here, see how these spray patterns? So what I've used this paper for is to check my spray pattern at the distance to make sure I've got it where I want. Okay? Now, if you look here, you'll see how everything's over here at about a 2 o'clock position. So that's for this gun, that's where my settings are, and I know that on this gun. See, I've even put a mark here and a mark here, and I've got a white mark on this so I can see where it is.
Okay.
So I highly recommend once you get your gun dialed in, you make those marks on there so you know where it is. You don't have to guess, okay? And then this is just for testing out that pattern and making sure it's accurate. So if I'm doing a circle pattern for doing an edge, and so on. So right now, this is set up like I want. You want to be like this. Now, do not do this. It's not a windshield wiper, okay? And you never want to do this, okay? When you're spraying, you should be walking like this and cross-stepping, not this, because what happens is I stop. See I'm stopping? Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a wet spot, a wet spot, a wet spot. So you want to go like this and just go all the way down and keep a consistent motion, a consistent distance. All right? What I see a lot of is people go like this and they swoop out. So as you do that, so this is a set distance, right? So when I change my angle, what happens? I get further away from the workpiece and it's not going to lay out the same. All right, I'm not getting as much material on there now because now it's going to look like overspray down here, whereas here it looked right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so consistent angle. Don't do this. You just hold your arm out straight and you sidestep like this and keep a consistent speed going across the workpiece at a consistent distance. Practice doing that. That makes more difference on how your finish will turn out than anything else you can adjust. So get used to going at a consistent speed and holding your arm. Never do this, never do that, okay? That's going to give you bad results. The other thing is you want to hold your gun about like this. It's designed where the handle is level. Not this, not that. Where the handle is level is where you should be. That's how it's designed. And your other hand should be holding your line like this. So that way, if your line gets caught on something, it doesn't jerk your gun, and also your gun's not dragging across your work and getting dust on it. Or dirt or impurities in your finish or on your workpiece. So that's how you should be doing it. So you can see, just like this. All right, and again, sidestepping, not step stop, not step stop. Because again, if you're stopping, so is the gun, and then that material is keeping coming. Never, ever, ever start and stop over a workpiece. You shouldn't be, all right, let's go. So what you should be doing is this. Let it equalize, count to 2. Drop down. Drop down.
How much overlap do you get, Joey?
About 6 inches.
Okay.
I do about a 6-inch pattern. And you'll find, and keep in mind, depending on your gun, what you get your straight pattern, that's going to separate. But if you're seeing heavy lines, light line, heavy, where you're getting stripes, then either you got too much or not enough, you know. So you'll have to adjust that for yourself because you'll be able to tell.
So you don't actually overlap.
You just want it towards bleeding in, not overlapping. Because if you overlap, you're going to have a wet line, and it'll look like stripes in your finish because it's too thick. You're putting on too much material in one spot, okay? Or you're going to have spots where it looks like overspray. It's going to be dry because you've got too much of it a line. And again, that's where taking a few times, don't worry about getting work done, just get your method down. And it's just in figuring it out, you know, what you need to do. Once you figure out what you need to do, then you just duplicate it when you're actually working. And again, if you don't like it, get a rag, get a little alcohol, wipe the sucker off, takes 30 seconds and you're ready to go again, versus taking 20 minutes to sand it all back, wipe it down, get it ready for finish again, resetting your gun. Okay? Now, let's go back over here to the table. So, a lot of people talked about thinning it. I don't recommend thinning a whole lot. It really doesn't need it. Now, I do thin when it's cold. Right now, it's cold as you know what out here. We just had snow. So right now we're using the Satin 700. All right, we use 90% of what we use is this. So I'll give it a good shake to make sure that the silica in here gets distributed. I'm not worried about air bubbles. That's going to come right out. So I'm going to pour this in here. I usually fill up about half a cup. That's going to be enough to do about anything of any size. Now, if you come over here and look in the gun, full of bubbles, right? So for this purposes here, I take this bottle. This is full of ISP. And I'm going to give it one good squirt. I know this is not measured. I'm sure a few of you who are OCD are freaking out right now, but that's okay. And I'm going to take a popsicle stick here that I use for stirring. And I'm going to stir that up. And look at there, all the bubbles are gone. And really what I'm looking for is a consistency that pours. All right? See how that pours nice and easy? It flows. If I had done that beforehand, which I should have showed you, I apologize for that. But unmixed, see how it's like drip, drip, drip and really thick? That's not going to spray well. All right? You got to make sure that that fluid is going to flow evenly off the stick, or it's not going to flow evenly out the gun.
And just as a side note to that, everybody, recommended, all our viscosities are QC'd in at 72, 74 degrees Fahrenheit. So when we're in Myrtle Beach now, and they just got 5 inches of snow the other day, I think we're 30, 25 degrees here right now.
Yeah, it's cold.
So it's cold. That viscosity.
And you can see how I'm dressed, and we're inside.
That viscosity is probably twice what it should be coming out. So you can either heat it up 80, 90 degrees and not thin it, or thin it and you get similar results.
So word of caution with heating it up. So yes, that does help initially, but you're blowing cold air in a cold gun, and whatever you've heated up, by the time it gets out, it's cold again.
That's a good
Okay?
point.
The gun is cold. It's not going to stay that way. So I've found that it's better just to thin it a little bit, and then the temperature issue goes away. Okay. So I've talked to a few people who have done as much as 10%, 15%. I find that's too much. I think that what happens is it starts as that, it almost will dry orange peeling, because what happens is the finish will dry and the alcohol evaporates out first, and then you have the silica and everything gathering up like wrinkles. So don't over thin. You just need you saw what it is, just a little bit of squirt in there just to thin it out. Take a little stick and just get it to where it's just not dripping and splattering, but just flowing off. If it's flowing off the stick, it's going to flow out the gun. And you can just eye that if you want to figure out what that exact ratio is. But really, it just needs to be what works in your shop for the temperature you're spraying at. And that you just need a little bit. Maybe a few percentage points or 5% most. And that's just to get it to flow good. All right. And they've got viscosity cups if you want to test that. All your finished manufacturers do it. I've just learned to do it by eye. Once you get a feel for something, it's kind of like cooking. Like, oh, this is the right amount of salt. You get to know it after a while. So,
but once you get in the summer months here and it gets warm, you do not.
Yeah, I don't thin it at all in the summer months because it don't need to. Because it's plenty warm enough to get it viscosity. But remember, we're all year-round people here. We all got to work year-round. So that's as far as that. Now, when I'm done with this, I don't use. If you notice here, I don't use a strainer. I do not take. Some of you may forget this. I don't clean my gun after a use. I usually clean it about once a week. All right, but I also make sure that my gun is not anywhere near my UV light. And every time I use the gun, I will spray in here and on the tip with alcohol to make sure there's no residue left on the exterior areas that can be exposed to light. The other thing you want to get in the habit of doing is make sure you're using spray gun lube. Okay? Every manufacturer makes do not use oil. It can get in your finish and screw things up. But spray gun lube on your needle seat area. That way it doesn't stick on you. Okay? So, and that should cover about 90% of what you're going on. Now, the tip I am using is a PR30 from Devil Bliss that came with the gun. It came in with a PR10 and PR30. This one requires 21 PSI. It flows, I think, 450 something in metric airflow. The bottom line is these tips can only flow so much. So you can't have too much flow. You can only have too much pressure. Okay? Make sure you're running whatever the recommended amount of pressure is for that tip, and then experiment with your pattern being bigger or smaller to what works for you. But 6 to 8 inches, you don't want to go any higher than that. Okay? And remember, proper form is the most important thing no matter what you're spraying. All right? We're not sweeping. We're not windshield wiping. We are straight and even all the way across. Okay? So we're going to go to the next video. We're going to show you actually us spraying the product. All right? Thanks for watching.